So far in this series, I've told you how to make the brand new Nero quantum processors and the Fixonium fuel rods. And today, it's the turn of the superposition oscillators, an item that's been in Satisfactory for years, but it served no purpose. Luckily though, the recipe is super simple. That's because it's one of 4 items used to make the brand new Phase 5 space elevator part. So make sure you're here this time tomorrow to see how to make that absolute complicated mess of an item. As usual, a massive shout out to everyone that has subscribed in the last 24 hours. You guys are absolutely incredible. But without further ado, let's just dive into this very quick tutorial. And this is it. I told you, this is actually a really easy recipe to make. Again, the superposition oscillators, which is produced in the quantum encoder. So let's start with the easiest part in my opinion, which is the aluminium sheets. Luckily with aluminium sheets, it's actually, again, rather easy to make. The only raw resources you actually need is copper, bauxite, water, obviously, and oil. Because as we can see here, petroleum coke is used making heavy oil residue, and heavy oil residue is made from crude oil. The reason as to why I didn't include that recipe in this graph is because there's many different ways that you can make that heavy oil residue. As you'll be seeing throughout some of these recipes, I have got a couple alt recipes that I like to use instead because I find it a lot easier. One of them being the copper ore plus water to make the copper ingot recipe. I prefer this because it saves a bunch of copper ore and the other ores we'll be using as well today. So you combine the aluminium solution with a petroleum coke, that then forms the aluminium scrap, from which you get water as a byproduct, which is useful for a lot of things in this game. And then from that you can then make your aluminium ingots, then combine that with the copper ingots to form your aluminium sheet. It really isn't a very difficult recipe, but you most likely won't be doing this until mid-game, and for reasons I'll explain later on, you won't be able to get your superposition oscillators until at least the end of the mid-game. Moving on now to something which again you might have seen in the game, and that's because you can currently make it, that is crystal oscillators. The easiest way to make these crystal oscillators, in my opinion, is using quartz crystal, rubber, and AI limiters. Again, rubber isn't a raw resource, it's used from crude oil, but again, there's many different recipes you might prefer to use instead, so that's why I've left that as like a raw resource icon. But moving on, with quartz crystals, it's extremely easy to construct. You only really need quartz and water, and again, you don't even need that if you don't want to do the alt recipe. In theory, you just need raw quartz. But if you're trying to save on quartz, then yeah, definitely add this water as well. The AI limiters, again, extremely simple to make. You just need quick wire and copper sheets. Copper sheets, in theory, you can just use from this recipe, which is copper ingots, copper ore, which is fantastic. Same with quick wire, you just need Caterium ingots, which you can make for Caterium ore. But if you would like to save out on these ores, just do this recipe instead. It's pretty cool, and it will save you resources if you need to save resources. So these are all the parts that we are familiar with and that we've been able to craft now for a while. Let's now move on to the new stuff. And again, if you've been watching the last couple of videos, you'll know exactly what I'm about to say. But in case you haven't seen it, then do not worry, let me explain. So the other 2 pieces that you need to craft the superposition oscillators is excited photonic matter and dark matter crystals. But let's start with the excited photonic matter, because this is actually quite interesting. To form this, you have to use a machine called the converter, not a constructor, it's a converter. And here's a quick video of what this machine actually does. If you've got a bunch of resources that you're not using and instead you want to use something else, you can select an item that you want. Raw resources you can choose are limited, but it's still a pretty cool feature. Something else that you can do is combine some ingots, which form this, a fixite ingot. However, this is not needed for this recipe. It's important to note though, because one of the byproducts of creating that ingot is this, the excited photonic matter. So exactly how do you make the fixite ingot? Well, you need to combine either iron ingots, Caterium ingots, or aluminium ingots together with the SAM ingots, which you can make just from collecting SAM ore from the miners. Bear in mind, it doesn't have to be iron, Caterium, and aluminium, it could be one or the other if you so wish. But do bear in mind, if you do use iron, you'll get worse rates than if you were to use aluminium, which is the best. and Caterium is more like a mid sort of ingot. But if you were to use any three of these ingots, and again you have to, combine it with this, you can then form your fixite ingot, which then forms the excited photonic matter. It's extremely easy to do. Speaking of things that are extremely easy to do, let's talk a bit more about dark matter crystal, which is a bit more complicated, but it's still fairly easy in theory. All you need for this is diamonds and dark matter residue. With the diamonds, you can form it very easily just using coal. That is it. For every 12 pieces of coal you use, you form 1 diamond, which is quite steep. It means that for every 1,200 coal you use, you're only getting 100 diamonds, so do be cautious about that. Regarding the dark matter residue, this is definitely a more of a late game sort of item, and that's because you can get this thing from 4 different resources that we know of so far. Synthetic power shards, AI expansion server, which we'll be talking a lot more about in tomorrow's video, neuroquantum processors, and of course, the superposition oscillator. Because whenever you use the quantum encoder to form any of these parts, you are always going to get dark matter residue as a byproduct. Meaning, yes, a byproduct from the superposition oscillators can then be reused as the dark matter residue to then form the dark matter crystals, which is incredible. Overall, the crystal oscillators and the aluminium sheets can be done mid-game. However, when it comes to things like constructing the dark matter crystal, which does require dark matter residue, this is going to take you a lot more time, since especially you have to unlock the particle accelerator to make diamonds in the first place. So don't be expecting to unlock superposition oscillators until you're probably somewhere in the late game. Not early game, but like late game, like 80 or 90% of the way through the game. Very quickly, we need to talk about alternate recipes, because unfortunately a few of these recipes might be changing in the future. So do bear that in mind when it comes to recipes like this, or the Fixonium fuel rod, or even the neuroquantum processor. Some of these other recipes might be changing. However, when it comes to all the new 1.0 stuff, like the diamonds, the fixite ingots, the SAM ingots, and all this is all staying. It's just a couple of these older alternate recipes that might be changing in the future. I feel like that's quite important to say, just in case some of these recipes aren't available for you after 1.0 comes out. Again, I'm recording this before 1.0 drops. My next 2 tutorials will be talking about how to make the AI expansion server as well as the synthetic power shard. So make sure you do keep an eye out on the channel for these 2 videos, since I know they're most likely going to be quite a well-demanded video. But regarding the superposition oscillator, I'm very happy with everything we've talked about today. Before we go, again, a massive thank you to Chaos Rising, Jan Matejko, and Mao for becoming members. If you too would like to become a member of the channel, then click the link down below. Thank you again, guys. Either way, thank you so much for watching today's video. Click on the left or right of your screen to see more of my content, and subscribe if you like Satisfactory. Have an amazing rest of your day, and remember, Godspeed.